The sheriff's deputy grabbed the last suitcase before Daniel Carter could reach it. "Sir, that's enough. You need to leave." Daniel looked toward the front door. "Emily, please. Just let me explain." Emily Carter stood in the doorway of the home they'd built together. Her face wasn't angry anymore. It was empty. There's nothing left to explain. Their 16-year-old son, Noah, stood behind her. "Dad." Emily gently stopped him. "Inside." Daniel swallowed. "I wasn't unfaithful. I know. I didn't gamble our money away. I know. I never stopped loving you." Emily's voice turned cold. "But you stopped providing." The words hit harder than any punch. "I lost my company, Emily. You had 6 months to recover. I tried. You failed." The deputy set Daniel's final box beside him. He picked up his suitcase, walked to an old borrowed sedan, and looked back one last time. Emily didn't wave. She simply closed the front door. The sound echoed inside him long after he drove away. 6 months later, millions watched as a television host lifted a golden envelope. "Our $500 million grand prize winner is..." A pause. "Daniel Carter." The audience exploded. Across the country, phones buzzed. Inside the same living room where she'd watched him leave with a suitcase, Emily stared at the television in disbelief. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered. Daniel looked straight into the camera. For one brief second, it almost felt like he was looking at her. But that moment had been earned through humiliation, rejection, and sleepless nights. Before we continue, subscribe, like this video, and tell us in the comments. If someone abandoned you at your lowest point and returned after you became successful, would you give them another chance? 6 months earlier, Daniel never imagined one failed business would destroy his life. For 12 years, he had built Carter Industrial Solutions into a respected manufacturing company. He wasn't flashy. He simply solved problems. Then the economy turned. Orders vanished. Banks refused loans. Investors disappeared. Daniel spent every dollar he had trying to keep his 42 employees paid. Emily warned him. "You're risking everything. They have families. So do we. I can't abandon them. You can't save everyone." Eventually, payroll became impossible. Daniel gathered his employees. "I've exhausted every option. I have to close." The room fell silent. One employee stepped forward. "You fought longer than anyone would have." Others hugged him. Several cried. Daniel turned off the warehouse lights himself. It was the loneliest walk of his life. At home, Emily sat surrounded by unpaid bills. "How bad?" "It's over." "You closed the company?" "I had no choice." "So what now?" "I'll find work." "When?" "As soon as I can." "That's not an answer." "I'll do whatever it takes." She laughed bitterly. "You were a CEO last week." "I'll sweep floors if I have to." "You should have done that months ago." "I spent our savings paying salaries." "You spent them chasing a company that was already dead." "They depended on me. And I depended on you." Neither apologized. Over the next several weeks, Daniel submitted hundreds of job applications. Every interview ended the same way. "We've chosen another candidate." One afternoon, he returned home with groceries bought using his last unemployment payment. Emily sat with her friend Vanessa. "So?" Emily asked. "No luck today." "I figured. I'll keep trying." "Trying doesn't pay the mortgage." Daniel glanced at Vanessa. "Can we not do this in front of company?" Emily folded her arms. "Maybe someone besides me needs to say it. Stop pretending everything will go back to normal." "It will." "Based on what?" "I've rebuilt before." "This isn't before." Just then Noah entered. "Dad, Coach says the basketball trip costs $600. Daniel hesitated. "I'll figure something out." Emily answered first. "I already paid it." "Thank you. I didn't do it for you." That sentence stayed with him all night. The next morning Daniel accepted a low-paying warehouse job unloading trucks before dawn. His body ached, but he came home smiling. "I found work." Emily barely looked up. "It's temporary. It's a start. It's survival. I told you I'd work. You promised you'd rebuild. I still will." She looked at him with exhausted eyes. "I don't believe that anymore." Daniel walked upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and cried alone. He had no idea that downstairs, Emily had already made the decision that would change all of their lives forever. Daniel barely slept. At 3:15 the next morning, his alarm rang. He dressed quietly, grabbed a cup of coffee, and headed to the distribution center. Every box he lifted reminded him how quickly life could change. 6 months earlier, he had signed contracts worth millions. Now he was loading trucks before sunrise. His supervisor, Rick, tossed him a pair of gloves. "You're late by 30 seconds. Daniel glanced at the clock. "I'm sorry." Sorry doesn't move freight. Daniel simply nodded and got to work. By lunchtime, sweat soaked through his shirt. His hands were blistered, and his back screamed with every movement. A younger worker named Malik sat beside him. "You ever done this kind of work before?" Daniel smiled faintly. "First week. You look like an office guy." "I used to own a manufacturing company." Malik laughed. "For real?" Daniel nodded. "What happened?" "I believed hard work could solve every problem." Malik shrugged. "Sometimes it can." Daniel looked into the distance. "And sometimes it isn't enough." When he got home that evening, the driveway was full of unfamiliar cars. Inside, Emily was hosting friends. The conversation stopped as Daniel walked in wearing his dusty work clothes. Emily forced a smile. "There you are." Daniel nodded politely. "Evening." One of the guests whispered just loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I thought he was still an executive." Another replied, "Apparently not." Daniel pretended not to notice. He headed upstairs, but Emily called after him. "Can we talk?" He stopped. "In private." They stepped into the study. Emily closed the door. "I've spoken to my lawyer." Daniel frowned. "What lawyer?" She took a deep breath. "I've filed for divorce." For a moment, he thought he had misheard her. "What?" "I can't keep living like this." "We're struggling, Emily. Families struggle. This isn't struggling. This is surviving. So we survive together." "I don't want to." The words drained every bit of strength from his body. "You promised forever." "I promised to build a life with you." "And we did. We had one." Daniel's voice cracked. "We still can." Emily slowly shook her head. "I've already made up my mind." "What about Noah?" "I've talked to him." "You talked to him before talking to me?" "I had to prepare him." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "You made this decision without me." "I made it because of you." He stepped back as if she had struck him. "No. You made it because you stopped believing in us." Emily opened the study door. "I think you should stay at a hotel tonight." Daniel looked at her. "This is still my home. For now." The following week became a blur of paperwork, legal notices, and impossible conversations. One evening, Noah knocked on Daniel's bedroom door. "Dad, come in." The teenager sat on the edge of the bed. "Mom says you'll probably move out." Daniel forced a smile. "Looks that way." Noah stared at the floor. "I don't know what to do." "You don't have to choose sides." "But everyone keeps asking me." Daniel placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Listen to me. Your mother loves you. So do I. That will never change." Noah nodded, but tears filled his eyes. "I just want things to go back." "So do I." Neither of them noticed Emily standing outside the door, listening. 2 days later, Daniel met his attorney. After reviewing the financial records, the lawyer sighed. "Because the business failed and most of the assets were jointly owned, this won't be easy." "What does that mean?" "It means you may lose far more than you expect." Daniel leaned back in silence. For the first time, the reality truly settled in. He wasn't just losing a marriage. He was about to lose everything. And if you're still watching, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and stay until the end, because what happened to Daniel was something no one, not even Emily, could have imagined. The courthouse felt colder than Daniel expected. Emily sat across the room beside her attorney, never once looking in his direction. Daniel's lawyer leaned over. "Stay calm. Answer only what's asked." Daniel nodded. The hearing lasted less than 2 hours, but every minute felt like another piece of his life slipping away. When it was over, the judge adjusted his glasses. Based on the financial records presented, this court awards the marital home to Mrs. Carter. The remaining assets will be divided according to the settlement before the court. Daniel lowered his head. He had known it was possible. Hearing it out loud was different. Outside the courtroom, he caught up with Emily. Was there really no other way? She stopped but didn't turn around. I waited 6 months, Daniel. I was trying. I know. Then why? Because trying wasn't changing anything. He searched her face for the woman he had fallen in love with. She was gone. I hope you find what you're looking for, he said quietly. Emily hesitated for the first time. So do I. She walked away. The following Saturday, Daniel returned to the house with a rented van to collect the few belongings the settlement allowed him to keep. His toolbox, some clothes, family photographs, a watch his father had left him. Nothing more. As he carried out another box, Noah ran outside. Dad. Daniel smiled. Hey, buddy. Noah hugged him tightly. I don't want you to leave. Daniel held him for a long moment. I'm not leaving you. Remember that. Can I come with you? Before Daniel could answer, Emily stepped onto the porch. Noah, come inside. No. Noah. I want to stay with Dad. Emily's voice hardened. Inside. Now. Noah looked at Daniel, tears rolling down his cheeks. Daniel forced another smile. Go with your mom. We'll figure this out. After a few seconds, Noah slowly obeyed. The front door closed. Daniel stood alone in the driveway. He looked at the house one final time before driving away. That night, he checked into the cheapest motel he could find. The room smelled of bleach and old carpet. He sat on the edge of the bed, opened his wallet, and counted his cash. $312. That was all he had left. His phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Mr. Carter. Speaking. This is the bank. We're calling regarding the outstanding balance on your business loan. Daniel closed his eyes. I know. We'll need to discuss repayment options. I'll call you tomorrow. He ended the call before they could hear his voice break. The next morning, he worked another shift at the warehouse. Rick noticed Daniel moving slower than usual. You okay? Didn't sleep much. Rick handed him a bottle of water. Life hits hard sometimes. Daniel managed a tired smile. You have no idea. During lunch, Malik sat beside him again. You ever think about quitting? Quitting what? Everything. Daniel was quiet for several seconds. Once. What stopped you? Daniel pulled out a folded picture of Noah from his wallet. Him. Malik nodded. Then keep going. That evening, Daniel stopped at a small diner before returning to the motel. The waitress recognized him from previous visits. The usual. He smiled. Only if I can still afford it. She placed a plate in front of him a few minutes later. When Daniel reached for his wallet, she shook her head. The gentleman at the counter already paid. Daniel looked over. An elderly man wearing a baseball cap raised his coffee mug. You looked like you needed one good meal. Daniel walked over. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. The old man smiled. Years ago, someone did the same for me. Daniel sat down. I don't even know your name. Frank. I'm Daniel. Frank studied him for a moment. You've lost something. Daniel gave a bitter laugh. Everything. Frank stirred his coffee. Good. Daniel frowned. Good. When a man has nothing left to lose, he finally discovers who he really is. Daniel wasn't sure whether to agree or argue. Before leaving, Frank reached into his jacket and handed Daniel a folded flyer. "What's this? Take a look." Daniel unfolded it. A national television competition. Grand prize. $500 million. He laughed. "You've got to be kidding." Frank smiled. Sometimes life knocks on the strangest doors. Daniel slipped the flyer into his pocket, convinced he'd never look at it again. He had no idea that one small piece of paper was about to change his life forever. Daniel tossed the flyer onto the passenger seat and started the engine. $500 million, he muttered. "People like me don't win things like that." The next morning, he found the flyer again while cleaning out the car. He was about to throw it away when Malik walked over. "What's that?" "Some TV competition. Why not try?" Daniel laughed. "Because they aren't looking for a broke 43-year-old who's living in a motel." "You don't know that." Daniel shrugged and slipped it back into his pocket. That evening, after another exhausting shift, he visited Noah for his scheduled dinner. They shared burgers at a small restaurant. "So, how's school?" Daniel asked. "It's okay." "You don't sound convinced." Noah hesitated. "Some kids heard about the divorce." Daniel's smile faded. "I'm sorry. They keep saying Mom was right to leave." Daniel looked down at his plate. "What do you think?" "I think—" Noah paused. "I think you never stopped fighting." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Thank you, son." Before they left, Noah noticed the flyer sticking out of Daniel's pocket. "What's that?" Daniel handed it to him. "A television competition." Noah read it twice before looking up. "You should do it." Daniel chuckled. "I don't stand a chance. You always told me the only guaranteed way to lose is not to try." Daniel froze. Those were his own words. Noah smiled. "Maybe it's time you listened to your own advice." That night, Daniel sat alone in the motel room, staring at the application page on his phone. His finger hovered over the submit button. "What have I got to lose?" He pressed it. 3 weeks passed without a reply. Life continued. Warehouse. Motel. Job applications. Rejected emails. Repeat. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, his phone rang. "Is this Daniel Carter?" "Yes." "This is Amanda from the producers of Second Chance America. We'd like to invite you to the first round of auditions." Daniel blinked. "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?" "We loved your application." For several seconds, he couldn't speak. Finally, he whispered, "I'll be there." He ended the call and simply sat in silence. Then he laughed. Not because he expected to win. Because for the first time in months, someone had said yes. Across town, Emily was having coffee with Vanessa when her phone buzzed. A notification from Noah. Dad got invited to a national TV audition. Vanessa smirked. "A TV show?" Emily forced a laugh. He always did dream big. But something about the message stayed with her. That evening, Daniel called Noah. "I've got some news." "I already know." "You do. You got in." Daniel laughed. "I haven't won anything yet." "You won the chance." There was a brief silence. "Dad." "Yeah." "I'm proud of you." Daniel closed his eyes. Those 4 words meant more than any prize ever could. He hung up and looked around the tiny motel room. 6 months earlier, he had walked away from the only home he had ever known with 2 suitcases and a broken heart. Now he was packing another bag. This time, not because someone had thrown him out, but because opportunity had finally knocked. He zipped the suitcase shut, picked it up, and smiled. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't running from his past. He was walking toward his future. If you've enjoyed this story so far, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Daniel will really win the $500 million, or is an even bigger surprise waiting for him? Because what happened after Daniel stepped onto that television stage was something no one, not even Emily, could have imagined. Daniel arrived at the television studio before sunrise with one small suitcase and a heart that refused to believe he belonged there. Contestants from all over the country filled the waiting area. Some were laughing. Some were rehearsing. Others looked as nervous as he felt. A producer clipped a microphone to his jacket. "Daniel, we'll live in 15 minutes." He nodded, but his hands trembled. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled. "I've had worse mornings." She laughed. "I read your story. I hope today is the beginning of something better." "So do I." The first round began. Contestants answered questions under intense time pressure. One by one, people were eliminated. Daniel barely survived. The second round required teamwork. A businessman refused to work with him. "I need someone stronger." Daniel simply stepped aside. When the challenge ended, it was the businessman who was eliminated. As he walked past Daniel, he shook his head. "I misjudged you." Daniel answered with a smile. "It happens." Week after week, viewers watched him advance. He wasn't the smartest contestant. He wasn't the loudest. But every time someone needed encouragement, Daniel was there. Social media exploded with support. "The comeback dad. The man who never quit. Daniel deserves this." Even Rick gathered the warehouse workers around a television during lunch breaks. Malik grinned. "I told you he had a chance." Rick folded his arms. "I've never been happier to be wrong." Across town, Emily could no longer avoid the show. Everywhere she went, people talked about Daniel. One evening she turned on the television just as he was being interviewed. The host smiled. "Daniel, you've become America's favorite contestant. What's kept you going through everything you've been through?" Daniel thought for a moment. "My father used to tell me that character isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed when everything falls apart." The audience applauded. "I lost my business. I lost my marriage. I lost my home. There were mornings I didn't know how I'd make it through the day. But quitting would have taught my son the wrong lesson." Emily stared at the screen without moving. Vanessa, sitting beside her, spoke softly. "He never blamed you." Emily couldn't answer. For the first time since the divorce, guilt settled heavily on her shoulders. The finale arrived. Only 2 contestants remained. The studio lights dimmed. The host held the final envelope. "Ladies and gentlemen." The audience fell silent. "Tonight, one person will leave with $500 million. Daniel's pulse raced. His opponent squeezed his hand. "No matter what happens, you've inspired millions." "So have you." The final challenge appeared on the giant screen. One question. One answer. Everything depended on it. Daniel closed his eyes for just a second. He thought about Noah. He thought about the warehouse. He thought about walking away from his home with 2 suitcases. When he opened his eyes again, he gave his answer. Silence. The host looked toward the judges. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, the chief judge smiled. "That is correct." The audience erupted. Confetti exploded into the air. Daniel covered his face as tears streamed down his cheeks. The host embraced him. "Daniel Carter, you have just won $500 million. Back home, Emily dropped the remote. Her phone began vibrating non-stop. Friends, neighbors, news alerts. Everyone was sending the same message. Daniel won. She sank onto the couch, unable to process what she had just witnessed. Meanwhile, the host handed Daniel the ceremonial check. "What are you thinking right now?" Daniel took a deep breath. "I'm thinking about my son." "What would you like to say to him?" Daniel looked directly into the camera. "Noah, if you're watching, thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." At home, Noah burst into tears. "Dad." The next morning, reporters crowded outside Daniel's hotel. Questions came from every direction. "What's your first purchase? Will you start another company? How does it feel to become one of the biggest winners in television history?" Daniel smiled. "The first thing I'm buying isn't a car." "What is it?" "Time." The reporters looked confused. "I've spent months trying to survive. Now I want time with the people I love." 2 days later, there was a knock on his hotel suite door. Emily stood outside. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had watched him leave 6 months earlier. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." Daniel listened quietly. "I was afraid," she continued. "I thought our life was over." "It was. I stopped believing in you." "I know." Tears filled her eyes. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." Daniel nodded gently. "I've forgiven you." Hope flickered across her face. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Her smile faded. "I wish things had been different." "So do I." There was nothing else to say. She walked away. Later that afternoon, Noah arrived. The moment he saw his father, he ran across the room and hugged him. "You did it." Daniel laughed through his tears. "We did it." "No." Noah smiled. "You never gave up." Daniel held his son tightly. "No amount of money is worth more than hearing you say you're proud of me." Months later, Daniel reopened Carter Industrial Solutions, rehiring many of the employees he had once been forced to let go. Rick became operations manager. Malik accepted a leadership role. Frank, the stranger who had handed Daniel the flyer, was invited to the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "You changed my life," Daniel told him. Frank smiled. "No. You changed it the day you decided not to quit." Daniel often said the $500 million changed his circumstances. But it wasn't the greatest prize he received. The greatest prize was discovering that losing everything had not broken him. It had revealed the man he was always capable of becoming. If this story reminded you that your lowest moment doesn't have to be your final chapter, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs hope today. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Daniel's shoes? Until next time, remember, sometimes life's greatest comeback begins the moment everyone else believes your story is over.